27. Loyalty, confidentiality, obedience, disclosure, and accountability. Professionalism after the commission check. Michael closes the Reynolds transaction file and looks across his desk at Sarah. You know what I like about this file? Sarah smiles. That we're finally done talking about it? Michael laughs. No, I can see what you did, but now I want you to think about something bigger. What did you actually owe Mike and Jennifer during this transaction? Sarah starts naming things: communication, disclosure, confidentiality, following their instructions, protecting their interests. Michael nods. Exactly. And none of those responsibilities meant simply doing whatever they told you. That distinction is one of the most important lessons an Arizona licensee can learn. Under AAC R4281101, an Arizona licensee owes fiduciary duties to the client and must protect and promote the client's interests, while also dealing fairly with all parties to the transaction. That sounds straightforward until the client wants something that conflicts with the agent's legal or professional responsibilities. Let's go back to the Reynolds transaction. Sarah owed Mike and Jennifer loyalty. She represented them. Her job wasn't to make David happy at their expense simply because she wanted the transaction to close. She wasn't supposed to push Mike into accepting $605,000 because she was worried about losing her commission. She wasn't supposed to convince Jennifer to agree to every repair request simply because that would make Sarah's job easier. The commission should never become the agent's hidden client. Imagine Sarah tells Mike during the inspection negotiation, "You should agree to everything because I really don't want this deal falling apart." Whose interests is Sarah protecting in that moment? Maybe Mike should agree to the repairs. Maybe he shouldn't. Sarah can explain the market consequences, contractual issues, alternatives, and risks. But the recommendation needs to be based on Mike and Jennifer's interests, not Sarah's desire to receive a commission. Now let's talk about obedience, because that word is frequently misunderstood. A real estate licensee should follow a client's lawful instructions within the agency relationship. The word lawful matters. Suppose Mike had told Sarah during the listing, "I don't want anybody knowing about that previous roof leak. Don't disclose it." Does loyalty require Sarah to obey? A client's instruction does not give a licensee permission to violate Arizona law or the commissioner's rules. AAC R4281101 addresses a licensee's obligations concerning known adverse material facts and material defects. Sarah cannot defend concealment by saying, "My seller told me not to say anything." The same principle applies if a seller gives Sarah a discriminatory instruction. Imagine a seller says, "Don't show my house to families with children." Sarah cannot follow that instruction. The Federal Fair Housing Act does not disappear because the discriminatory request came from the client. Obedience means lawful obedience. Now consider confidentiality. Remember when Mike privately told Sarah he might accept around $605,000? That was valuable negotiating information. Sarah couldn't casually tell David's agent, "Don't offer $615,000. Mike already told me he'll take $605,000. That would undermine her client's negotiating position. And closing doesn't suddenly turn confidential information into public information. 6 months later, Sarah shouldn't be sitting at lunch with another agent saying, "You should have seen Mike. He was desperate. He would have taken 65. Professionalism doesn't expire when the commission check clears. But here's where agents sometimes become confused. Confidentiality and disclosure are not the same thing. Mike's private negotiating position may be confidential. A known material property condition may trigger a disclosure obligation. Sarah can't label everything the seller tells her confidential and use that label to conceal something she is independently required to disclose. That's why agents need to understand what type of information they're dealing with. Is this the seller's negotiating strategy? Is this personal financial information? Is this a known property condition? Is this information affecting a party's ability to perform? Is this something the commissioner's rules specifically require the licensee to disclose? When you're unsure, that's when you involve your designated broker. Michael reminds Sarah of the roof issue. "You called me before it became a disaster." Sarah nods. That helped. Experienced brokers would much rather receive the call that begins, "I have a situation and want to make sure I'm handling it correctly," than the call that begins, "So, you're probably going to get a complaint." Broker supervision isn't supposed to be the emergency room you visit only after the transaction has crashed. Use your broker while the problem can still be managed. Professionalism also means knowing what you don't know. During the Reynolds transaction, Sarah encountered roof questions, water intrusion, solar financing, title issues, an appraisal, loan questions, inspection concerns, electrical repairs, escrow questions, and closing figures. Imagine if Sarah had tried to personally answer all of them. The roof is fine. That easement doesn't matter. The appraisal is wrong. The loan will definitely fund. That electrical condition isn't dangerous. You don't need an attorney. Those statements create unnecessary risk. Sarah's professional value isn't measured by pretending to know everything. It's measured partly by recognizing issues, communicating them, staying within her competence, and helping the client reach the appropriate professional when necessary. Sometimes that professional is an inspector. Sometimes it's a roofer. Sometimes it's the lender. Sometimes it's title or escrow. Sometimes it's an attorney. And sometimes it's simply your designated broker saying, "Don't send that email yet. Let's talk first." Then Michael asks Sarah another question. What was the hardest part of the Reynolds transaction? Sarah thinks about it. The uncomfortable conversations. Exactly. Telling Mike his price was too aggressive. Explaining that the previous roof leak mattered. Telling Jennifer they shouldn't guarantee the value of renovations. Explaining that David's appraisal didn't automatically disappear because Mike disagreed with it. Telling Mike the chandelier had to come back. Professionalism often means having the conversation the client doesn't want to hear. Ignoring a problem because the conversation is uncomfortable doesn't protect the client. It delays the problem. That's why communication is part of professional risk management. When something changes, communicate. When you receive important information, communicate. When you don't understand something, ask. When the client gives an important instruction, document it. When you make a mistake, involve your broker instead of hiding it. That's accountability. Michael leans back in his chair. Here's what I want you to remember. Your fiduciary duty doesn't mean doing whatever the client tells you. It means protecting the client's lawful interests while doing your job correctly. Sarah nods. Then her phone rings. She looks at the number. It's Daniel, David's former buyer's agent. Sarah answers. Hey Daniel, what's going on? There's a pause. David found something at the house, and he's asking questions about whether the Reynolds knew about it before closing. Sarah looks at Michael. Apparently the Reynolds transaction isn't finished teaching lessons after all, because a recorded deed doesn't guarantee that questions, disputes, or complaints will never surface again. What Sarah does after closing may be just as important as what she did during escrow. That's where we'll go in section 23, the post-closing call, when a problem shows up after the sale. Online discussion 1. Mike instructs Sarah not to disclose a known property condition that Sarah believes falls within her Arizona disclosure obligations. Should Sarah follow his instruction? Answer, no. Sarah's duty to follow client instructions applies to lawful instructions and does not authorize her to violate Arizona law or the commissioner's rules. She should explain the issue to Mike, involve her designated broker when appropriate, and comply with her independent professional and disclosure obligations. 2. 6 months after closing, another agent asked Sarah how low Mike was actually willing to go during negotiations. How should Sarah handle the question? Answer. Sarah should continue to protect confidential client information as required by the agency relationship, applicable law, and professional obligations. The fact that the transaction closed does not automatically make the seller's private negotiating position appropriate for Sarah to disclose to other people. 3. Why is contacting the designated broker early an important part of professionalism? Answer. The designated broker is responsible for supervision and can help the licensee identify legal, contractual, disclosure, and risk management issues before they become larger problems. Early communication also gives the brokerage an opportunity to guide the transaction while corrective action may still be available.